3,000.
What is doing? I hate doing it, but I want everyone to like, subscribe, follow us on our Instagram, hit the subscribe button right there. One click, it's totally free. It helps the channel grow. Share the content, comment, do all that good stuff. Help us keep bringing you 3,000 podcasts. Now to the guest. Cheers. What is doing? My name's Maloney. This is the 3,000 podcast. I'm joined today by Harley Webster, a.k.a. Phrase, a.k.a. Big Phrase. Thanks for coming, man.
Big Phrase the villain.
Yeah, indeed. Thanks for making the trek, man. I know it's been an effort for you to get down here, but I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. It's it's good to be here. Good little spot.
Yeah.
And it's been a while since I've done anything like this, so it's good.
I appreciate it, man. A lot of people who say, I don't normally do media, and I'm like, well, this isn't media. This is just two people having a chat. I'm pretty chill to talk to, I'd like to think.
Yeah. And I like that. It's good vibes. I mean, having a chat to anyone's good vibes. So
let's talk about your story. Obviously, there's a big part of it which is musical, and there's also post-music sort of stuff.
Yep.
But let's start at the beginning, man. Let's start about where you grew up and how you got involved in this music stuff.
Yeah, right. I really haven't talked about this for a long time. So I was obviously high school. I was born in 81. Mm-hmm. So by start of high school, I'm pretty heavily into hip-hop, NWA, Ice-T, Nas, all that jazz. And got into graffiti young, started writing in year 7. I grew up in Glen Waverley, so I was on the Glennie line, which would have been, back then it was East Malvern Boys, the Graph Connection, TGC, bit of WCA, a lot of those older crews. And yeah, I think I was just taken by the whole culture completely. And then I'd been rapping along to the hip hop I was listening to.
So mid-90s, we're talking sort of 95, 96?
Yeah, and then kind of started doing that in an Australian accent, not knowing that Aussie hip hop existed.
Which it was very small.
Back then, yes. I guess Obese, which would have been OBs at the time, must have existed because one day I was running the loop from Glen Waverley to Sindel, tagging trains, and I had my Walkman on with the radio in it, and I heard on PBS, I think it was DJ Chrissy, and it would have been Bias. Mm-hmm. And it was this guy rapping his own songs in an Australian accent. I was like, what the hell is this? And so they mentioned Obese, and I trekked in there maybe the weekend after that, found out where the shop was, and was just besotted, like really intrigued by that it was happening out there, and I didn't know that, I'd kind of been doing a similar thing. So after that, I started writing my own stuff. Uh-huh. Through high school. High school was a tough time for me. I just don't think I was ready for it. And I was pretty badly behaved. Had pretty big fallouts with my old man, and I got kicked out of home at maybe 15, 16, but just before I finished up at school in year 10, Jim Steins, who was a footy player for Melbourne, came to my school, and he was running a talk there, like a youth talk, whatever. And I was just fucking giving him grief from the back row, and eventually said, right, stand up. And I stood up, and I just, everybody kind of chuckled, and I thought, everyone's going to back me up here. And he started asking me questions, and I was being a dickhead. And he said, right, how many people in this room like Harley? Put your hands up. And it was the whole of year 10. And no one put their hand up. And he's like, right, how many people don't like coming to school because of Harley? And fucking heaps of people put their hand up. And he spoke to a kid that I'd bullied directly. And it just shattered me, dude. And afterwards I took off, was pretty upset, and he chased me out into the yard, and he caught up with me, and he was like, had a chat, said, I'm running a course at Highvale Secondary on these nights. I'm going to challenge you to come along. And I was the only guy from the whole school that turned up to it. And after that, I got involved with him. And he basically, I remember he said to me one day, you've got the kind of quality, Harley, that's you're either going to be a leader and bring a bunch of people up with you, or you're going to bring a lot of people down with you, you know?
Because you've got that leadership quality.
Yeah,
either way.
I think I had a spark, you know, and I was using it in the wrong way. And so through that, he kind of supported me in, I guess, helping me believe that maybe I could do something with my music. He lent me some money to buy some turntables.
Whoa,
yeah,
really? Because he could have totally been, this kid's being a dick, kick him out.
Correct.
And he went the opposite route.
Correct,
like,
yeah.
I see something in this guy who's heckling me.
Yeah. And so he ended up kind of over that next 5 to 10 years kind of mentoring me. And I ended up doing work with Reach, running courses and camps for the youth and whatever. And then I signed I met Daniel Merriweather, who's a singer from Melbourne. He introduced me to Marlon, which was Marlon Records at the time in Paran, on the same street as Obese.
And they had a studio?
They had a big studio, really amazing studio.
So how do you meet Merriweather?
French Gully Station.
Right. So just two school kids.
Yeah, this guy I knew, because Merriweather was from the hills, from Sassafras, and my parents had moved out to Rowville, so I was kind of kicking around. At that point, I kind of shifted from being a lot on the Glen Waverley line to the Belgrave line. Met some riders there, and then this guy I knew, who was actually, do you remember Jesse Martin, who sailed around the world?
Yeah, Lionheart.
Yeah, Lionheart. So his brother, Beau, got involved in Reach, his younger brother, and Jesse had got involved in Reach through Steinsy. So I met those two, and Beau had gone to school with Merriweather.
I had no idea Jim Steins was doing all this good stuff.
Yeah, man. He's an amazing guy,
Wow.
I met Merriweather at the train station. Beau's like, this is my mate Daniel. He's a singer. Harley, he's a rapper. And we rode into town and we're talking about music, and he took me to the studio. So eventually I got signed to Marlon. I wrote like a business proposal myself.
Where was Marlon Studios, just to paint the picture? It's in Paran.
So in Paran, you had Obese on Izzet, and then further up the street on the other side, Marlon's studio was up there.
Towards St Kilda or towards Richmond?
Towards St Kilda.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Towards like RMIT.
You cross over, is it Greville there?
Yeah. You cross over Greville. And
right, about halfway between Greville and RMIT.
Yeah. Or not RMIT, it's the other one, Swinburne. Yeah,
yeah, Swinney. And it was a 3-story studio downstairs, offices, and
yeah. Yeah, like Revolver's across the road, the back of Revolver.
Correct.
Yeah, I know where you are.
Right opposite. And yeah, I got Steinsy to write me a reference letter, and I went in and I presented all this stuff to Marlon, because at this point as well, Aussie hip hop has kind of done nothing.
We're talking 96, 97?
Nah, it's got to be later than that.
99?
It's got to be around 2000, I reckon. Yeah, somewhere around there.
So we still haven't had 1200. We still haven't had the Hilltop Hoods have got one record, maybe.
I don't think they've had Nosebleed Section out, or maybe it was like right around that time.
Bias has had his first record.
Yes, and anyway, Marlon took a big risk on me. I mean, he had taken a risk on Daniel Merriweather. Unfortunately for me and Daniel, Marlon was a Sri Lankan guy, 30 years old. He had a singing school with a guy called David Jans, and Merriweather had been attending that school, and that's where Marlon kind of scoped him from.
And he had a natural ability, but he was honing it there because he's obviously got a voice.
Amazing set of pipes, yeah, and just an incredible musician generally. And so Marlon started the label basically to sign Daniel and talent from the singing school.
Okay.
At which point I think he separated from Jans and just kind of went into Marlon Records. Daniel got signed through Marlon to Mushroom.
At a young age.
Yeah, really young age.
Like 17, 16, something.
Yeah, 17, 18. I would have been, by the time I got signed to Marlon, I was maybe 20, 19, 20.
Which is pretty out there when you think about it, because there wasn't too many Aussie rappers getting signed to anything.
I don't know if Aussie rapper had been signed to a label yet. I don't think the idea of a label kind of may not have even existed.
So even with OBs then, it was just, let's put some records out. There
It was just a store, yeah. Then Hoods jumped off, and, you know, overnight, that was big success and big money for all those boys. I know Tira Pegs went from, I remember him telling me, you know, I had a couple of grand in the account, and within 6 months, there was millions of dollars coming in, you know.
Crazy.
Getting bigger offices. I remember just all the stock of the records. They couldn't send it out to JB Hi-Fi and all that shit fast enough because they were distributing themselves. And so I think a little bit of hype started to bubble, and major labels must have thought, we got to get on board.
And also, sorry, but I'm just saying, MTV or Channel V at that point is playing a little bit of this stuff, which makes everybody take note. And you've got to think, the internet's not what it was. You weren't streaming videos, video clips. So if that's played on Channel V, that's as big as it gets.
Yeah, big time. Yep, totally. And anyway, I did a mixtape. That mixtape that you've got, it's ancient, super ancient. Here's a look. DJ Flagrant presents. So Marlon funded, I think we pressed up 10,000 of these.
Right.
And we put them out. You know, I was going to shows at Rod Laver or whatever it was then, and leaving them on seats before shows.
It made its way to the Metro office. That's where I got that from.
Yeah, right.
So I don't know if it might have been an obese show at Metro, or maybe you were handing them out or something.
Yeah. And then Marlon, I can't remember what happened, but basically he said, let's try and get you. Michael Parisi from Mushroom had showed some interest, and Marlon said, well, let's see what else is out there. So he went to Sydney, and he took a meeting with Universal Records. And I remember I called him that night and said, how did it go? And he said, oh, look, they've offered, they offered 50,000. I've gone back with 200,000 or something. And dude, I'm like, whoa, what? What are you talking about? $200,000?
And that's just on the back of that mixtape.
Yeah, because I think they would have seen it as like, well, this guy's already put 10,000 copies out. If we could 3 times that, which it's a major label, they're looking at a gold record possibly, you know. So they're thinking, well, there's 10,000 potential fans already. And they knew that I was coming from Marlon, who was a great businessman and had funding and had put time and money into it, and they knew that Merriweather was on that label. And then at that time, Merriweather was starting to make moves with Mark Ronson. Ronson had been out here.
So that was already happening.
Around that time, Marlon flew Ronson out to work with Daniel, and so I became friends with Ronson at that point too. And we were all in the studio together.
But Ronson wasn't who he became.
Ronson. This is like early days for Ronson as well.
Whose father is a musician as well.
His father is a musician, but it's his stepfather who is Mick is in Foreigner.
Okay.
But he's grown up. His mum's a socialite. You know, he's grown up in that world. But he was a DJ and kind of a celebrity DJ. And
his sister was too.
Yeah, and he was doing mixtapes and kind of getting into production. So it was very early days for Mark, but he was uber cool, and record labels knew who he was and what he was doing. And so I think that helped. And I signed directly to George Ash, who was the head then of Universal Records. So I didn't have a specific label manager. He signed me personally. And he was a really interesting dude and was like, let's not rush this. We'll put this first record out, but we're aiming for the next record will be the one that we really, you know, go after, which ended up being Clockwork. The first record was Talk with Force. It was finished. And so basically that was the other thing, is with that deal, it was kind of like Marlon was saying, well, we've already produced the record. There's, you know, you're putting in to match what we've already put in, so to speak.
Did you re-record or change up the tracks or anything?
Nah.
So who did the production on the first one? Just Flagrant?
The first record was me, Merriweather, and Jan Skubashevsky, who was Jay Scoobs, he went on to do Jackson, Cat Empire, Dan Sultan. He's done a lot of big movie stuff. He's got a lot of big runs on the board, Jan. But Marlon just basically gave us the keys to the studio. We had the keys to the building, and we were in there 24/7. Mm-hmm. You know, we'd walk past OBs, we'd have a slab on our shoulder, sort of thing. And we were partying and making tunes every day.
You were cool with all the OBs dudes?
Yeah. I was cool with those guys. I'd gone in the battle at Revolver. Mm-hmm. I think it was the second one. I snuck into the first one because I was underage. And then the second year round, must have turned 18 or whatever, and I went to that. And I ended up in the quarterfinals semi-finals or whatever you call it, against Muff. And he knocked me out. But I think that was, for me, I was like, wow, out of all these MCs, you know, I've done okay. Mm-hmm. I think Marlon, he gave me a lot of free rein, and then Talk with Force set me up because I had Universal and they kind of could put the nail in the coffin. So all of a sudden I was hosting video hits on the weekend. I was on Rage. My videos were getting played. And I was getting, I ended up Koshi. I think I did maybe it was 50 Cent. Supported someone that Universal had bought out. And is it Koshi? Is that his name?
On Channel 9.
On Channel 9 from the morning show. He was at that gig and he saw me perform first. And he called Universal and said, who is that kid? I want him on the morning show on Monday. So they flew me up to Sydney. I performed on that. I was getting a lot of good media coverage. And back then, media coverage was...
That's what it was.
Yeah, it was king, you know. And that set me up to the point where I got a lot of big international supports as well because of that. And I was the first Aussie hip-hop artist ever to sign to a major label in this country. Which was Universal. There was a bit of backlash at that point from the scene. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of guys thought, I remember people saying, "What have you got singers on your songs?" Because I was working with Daniel. And I think people thought I'd taken the easy route or like I hadn't paid my dues or something, Mm-hmm. And I felt that for quite some time, to the point where like sometimes I'd go on tour and, a guy got up in Wollongong and tried to kick me in the head and had a crew of guys waiting there for me. Like it was like I became a bit of a target for people to kind of, I don't know.
But it becomes tall poppy syndrome to an extent.
I think so. And I was never, I hung out with a lot of bad dudes and hard guys, but I wasn't personally, I hadn't been locked up in prison, or I wasn't super violent or anything like that. And I think that early Aussie hip-hop was about how tough you were, 100%.
Yep.
And I remember that once I started getting played, the song that I had with Maestro, which was the other thing I had, that Talk with Force record, it was probably one of the first international collabs with a big UK rapper. I had singers on there, and there was a lot of different stuff going on that just hadn't really been done yet. Mm-hmm. Most Aussie hip-hop was just fucking hard as nailed bars,
Yeah.
over loops. So...
And there wasn't a whole, that's where Hold On was on that one?
Yeah.
And see, there's not that many Aussie hip-hop songs at that stage that are sort of uplifting.
No.
Right?
No,
they were more like,
all.
I'll smash you and I'll
correct.
beat you. And this is like, hey, I feel for you and things will be okay, be positive.
Yeah.
That's a difference.
You're right. It was a really dark scene, And I remember that once things started, Here Now started getting played on the Jays, and I started getting people to my shows, and it was different. It was not all of a sudden, as soon as I got Triple J support, my shows went from being me kind of being nervous when I'd get to them, fuck, I hope there's no writers here that want to punch on tonight or whatever, to just a completely different demographic and crowd. and there was chicks at my shows all of a sudden, you know, and people that looked like surfies and whatever. And I was like, fuck, finally, this is good. And I felt like I was drifting out of that. And I feel like, I don't know, I just had the feeling that people were cut. They thought I was plastic because I had, you know, Universal, my first record budget, video budget was 30 grand, you know, and that was big bucks back then for a video.
But they have to recoup that though?
Yes, all that had to be recouped, but each video was, back then, was 30 grand. In comparison to when I finished up and Spotify had started to come in, I was desperate trying to get $500 off them for a, what do you call it, like a word video.
Yeah.
Because the landscape had shifted so much over that time.
But in that era of the first record and even your second record, people are still buying physical discs.
Yes, and so I'm making sales, and I'm that's getting recouped, and also I'm starting to earn money from shows, you know.
Yeah.
Anyway, that led me to Clockwork, which would have been 2009, I think.
2008.
2008 was it?
I don't know what you are, but
I don't know either.
I was having a look, obviously.
I know roughly, I think Talk with Force was 2005 and 2008, 2009 for Clockwork, and then I think 2011, 2012 for Babylon, I think. If my memory serves me, something like that. But Clockwork, because Talk with Force did not do what it was meant to do.
But you made that before the major.
Yes.
So you made that not with the intentions of getting the distribution and to the level that they probably had anticipated.
Yes. And then Clockwork, I went away. I made that record again with Yarn, and Merriweather was involved heavily in that too.
Did you attack that with a different idea? Were you like, I need to have my radio hits, I need to have my, you know what I mean?
I think for me, a big part of it was that not necessarily that I needed to have radio hits. In fact, I was probably kind of not anti that, but I wanted the record to say something and have a feeling, an emotion. Because I'd started to experience that feeling of getting people from a different demographic and realizing that maybe this could cross, you know, maybe Aussie hip hop could work in the UK, and I kind of somewhere in the back of my mind, I think I had that on the pinboard, and I guess I knew that if I was just in there, just doing that hard Aussie fucking ochre, I beat your head in rap, that was only going to lead me so far, you know. And obviously there was something about the hoods getting a run like that, and that was different, you know. It was musical and it was fun and it felt good and it was like a banger, but not in a 20 guys standing in a dark corner nodding their heads like they don't care what's going on, you know. So I knew that I wanted to do something different, and I wanted it to have a feeling and an emotion and mean something, and that is kind of what guided me. I also knew that I was really sick of, on the first record, because I'd played music when I was younger. I played the bagpipes, so I could sight read music. I'd played drums in a band in high school. My dad taught me guitar. And I hated with sampling that I was stuck with that, whatever that small piece of break or sample was that I could find. But then what if I wanted to go to a bridge? Well, unless you've got pieces from that song that you've sampled that you can flip up to make a bridge, you can't take it where you want it to go. You can hear it, but you don't have the bits you need. So that led me to like still sampling, but then because Yarn was a great musician and so was Merriweather, we could all play different instruments. And we kind of started sampling, but then layering the samples with keys and pianos and guitars, so that when it came time to go somewhere else, the sample could drop out and those other instruments could carry and we could change the chords, you know. And I guess in a sense it was songwriting more, like instead of just rapping over a beat or getting beat CDs from other producers where the beat was the beat, you know, and you were stuck with that. And that allowed me to be able to, if I had a certain verse that I'd written and I felt like it had this emotion, then I could make a beat on the MPC, start spitting the verse, and Jan could play chords behind it. No, not that one. Let's go here, you know, and kind of start to write them as songs. So that led me further down that path. I played the record when it was finished to my manager, DJ Flagrant, and he said that it wasn't hip hop enough for him, and he said, unfortunately, this is not Aussie hip hop enough for me. I think I want to step aside. Which was kind of shocked me.
This is Clockwork.
This is on the Clockwork album. I've just finished it. And he pulled back. He didn't completely bail. And then I'd played it to Universal. And they had also said, there's no radio hits on here. This record, it's not for mainstream.
What about the title track?
So here's the thing. They pull out. I've been shelved, basically, until I come up with some kind of radio hit.
And you've done a 3-record deal?
5 record.
5 record.
Yeah.
And is the first one count? Even though you've been shelved and you might have to put out 3 or 4 more records.
Correct. And so nothing happened for like, I don't know how long. It seemed like an eternity, maybe 6 months, maybe a bit more. And I was at the point where I was ready to give up. You know, I had no money coming in. And I went for a walk one morning and I was really upset about it. And I just thought, fuck it, I'm going to quit. I'm going to make one last attempt though. And I emailed, I can't remember how I got Richard Kingsmill's email at Triple J, was the head programmer. And I emailed him and I said, I know Universal delivered you an early, whatever they call it. It was like a preview of the album.
You service it or whatever.
And I'd said to him, I know you think that I'm a major label artist, because at that point Triple J weren't amazing with me. And I said, I've been shelved. Like, Universal won't touch this. I don't want you to think that there's some huge budget and it's getting pushed on you. Just please fucking listen to these 3 songs. These are the songs I think. They think I've got no radio single. If you don't hear it, then I'm willing to throw the towel in. I've done the best I can. And the next week, the song Clockwork went into high rotation on Triple J. My label, Universal, were like, what the hell? How did this happen? Not knowing that I'd emailed him myself. And from that point on, I began to have a personal relationship, business relationship with Kingsmill, where instead of Universal having their, whoever it was, marketing person go in and service him my record, like they do with everybody's, they sit down and say, right, Universal's got these 5 new albums this week. Yep. This one's great. It's a sales pitch, you know. So I would take the songs in and I would decide with Kingsmill which song he thought.
And he probably appreciated hearing from the artist rather than the A&R person.
Of course
anyway.
he did. And it probably, to be fair, stroked his ego. And, you know, it seemed to be working.
In hindsight, though, now, you could have probably said to Universal, if you don't like it, can I keep the rights to this album? But do you know what I mean?
I wish that I could have, but I had a good relationship with George Ass, and he was willing to keep supporting me. He just felt like, and fair enough, he was like, we need something we can sell.
Did that because I was listening to Triple J back then, and that did have a lot of rotation. Did that cross over to mainstream radio?
It got quite a bit of Nova play.
Because Nova was playing.
It wasn't huge like Nosebleed section, but it was getting played on Nova, and I was doing interviews flat out on all those radio stations.
With Kingsmill, because his name comes up a fair bit in this era.
Sure, I bet.
You've had a personal relationship with him, right? Where a lot of other people are like, he didn't like our stuff, he did like our stuff. Was he about the music?
I don't know. Kingsmill ended my career. I would say that as well.
Okay.
And I've never spoken. I mean, my close friends know that, but
it's crazy that one guy had so much power.
It's bullshit. And at the time, you couldn't speak out about it, you know. But I think towards the end, I remember a lot of artists that kind of got together and there was a backlash against him because in my eyes at that time, it was like, here's a guy, might have been in his late 40s, early 50s.
Dictating.
The music dictates the culture of the youth, you know? And it's like, why is a guy in his 40s deciding what kind of music gets played, which therefore determines what kind of clothes kids wear and what they're into? And I do remember sitting there on the third album, Babylon, thinking, I need to write a Triple J single. What the fuck is a Triple J single? A Triple J single is a song that Richard Kingsmill will like. And you shouldn't be writing, you should not be writing music based on what someone else necessarily is going to think or wants, especially one person who, it was crazy.
But he was good to you at that initial stage.
He was fucking amazing to me. It was like I was a golden child for them. I could do no wrong. So much so that at the end of that cycle for Clockwork, like I was nominated for Triple J Album of the Year, you know, with, I don't know how, I think there's 10 nominations or something. I was in there with Sarah Blasco and all those kind of people, Gautier's and shit. And so, you know, Clockwork did well for me. And I'd had ARIA nominations on both albums. Then came the Triple J Album of the Year, which was a massive fucking nod. They supported all my tours, so it was like Triple J Presents. I had bums on seat. I made a shitload of money from touring on that cycle. And I just thought, the next record's going to go, you know. Clockwork was not far off going gold. It might have been 10,000 copies. You know, it probably did 20-something thousand copies. So Universal, I think after that point, was starting to see that, okay, if he gets the next one right and the Triple J support continues, it could really take off. Wrote the third album, huge guests on there. The Preachers before they blew up. Jimmy Barnes was on there.
How'd you get Jimmy on there? Universal?
No, through my partner. I was married to Jade McRae. She's friends with Mahalia, so I'd known Mahalia and Jimmy for quite some time.
It would have been a spin out to the Oz hip hop community to see that Jimmy Barnes is on somebody who's come from those roots, man.
I don't even know how many people know about that. You know, again, by this time, I'm getting so paranoid from. I was doing a lot of drugs and drinking a lot, and I was paranoid that I didn't want to sell out, and I felt like I was fighting against the label, and to maintain my authenticity and my integrity, you know, as an artist and what I wanted to do. And so much so to the point that on that record, I refused to put Jimmy Barnes' name in. I don't even know if it's listed in the credits. I don't know if it's listed next to featuring Jimmy Barnes.
Yep.
And I said to Universal, it is not to go out in the press release that Jimmy Barnes is on this. I don't know how much more fucking stupid one person can be. Like, I should have sold that for everything that it was in press releases that I'm working with, you know, one of the most iconic artists in the country. But I wanted people to know that I'd made it. I didn't want to sell it on Jimmy Barnes or this or that, you know?
Yeah.
To my own detriment. And I think I made mistakes there, and my manager, I think that started to form cracks with me and Flagrant, because he put his life on the line for me.
But didn't he dip out during Clockwork?
He came back in. Once Clockwork started getting spun, we went hard together. And I, you know, to his credit, that may have just been, it was confronting then. It was really different to what was happening. And I think he had such heavy roots in the hip hop scene from the beginning that I think he was probably struggling with how that was going to make him look.
And had Phases come out by this stage? Not quite.
Not quite, no.
Yeah, okay.
Nah, Nate moved him down here just after Clockwork, I think. Okay. So I don't think, it wasn't that he fully turned his back on me. I think he was just trying to work out, right, well, this isn't what we started doing, and I don't know whether this is for me, you know?
Yeah.
And then when it got a run, I think he got inspired and we kind of made the most of it. But, yeah, in the end, I think it was my attitude that brought me undone. I was very hard to work with. Like I was becoming a control freak because I didn't trust people around me at that point. I trusted Nate, but not musically. That sounds horrible, but I felt like we had very different taste and ideas in music, and that maybe he didn't quite understand what I was trying to do musically, but he understood me as a person. He was a brilliant manager. So yeah, I kind of felt quite isolated, and then basically what happened, there was a lot of hype from Universal because Clockwork had done quite well, and I'd held on to my publishing all this time, so I hadn't ever signed that. I signed to Universal for recording, and Nate and I went and shopped my publishing up in Sydney just before Babylon was due to come out. Labels knew that there was some decent guests on there, and they also knew that Universal were really angling for this record to be the one that went. So I spoke to Universal Publishing, and then I spoke to EMI Publishing. EMI Publishing wanted to sign me. We took the meeting. They flew us up to Sydney. They offered me, I can't remember whether it was either $250,000 for the deal, for a 3-year deal with a $50,000 anniversary payment the following year. So it was all up, it was maybe $300K. It's a fucking big publishing deal back then. It was probably one of the last big publishing deals to get done at that time, because streaming was really starting to fuck things up.
Yep.
And I did it. I took the deal. I got the money. It cleared in my bank account. I had quite a bit of coins saved up from touring. I owned my apartment, and I woke up the day after it cleared, and I looked in my bank account, and I had a lot of money for 30-year-old or whatever I was. And I remember I just dropped on my knees, and I was fucking started bawling my eyes out, and I was just unhappy, dude. Making me emotional talking about it. But yeah, I was in a pretty dark place from just drugs, alcohol, not trusting people, touring so much, and feeling like I wasn't getting where I wanted to go with it. Even though those things were happening in the background, it was like, I don't know, I guess that imposter syndrome, something like that. And all this coincided with, I think it was Friday night, headlining one of the stages up at Splendor. Kingsmill flew up to watch the show. Show went fucking down beautifully. And the album is set to come out the following week. Universal's dead set that we're going to get. Don't worry about it. We're going to get album of the week. We're going to get album of the week.
Are you playing new tracks from the new album?
Yep, I'm playing the new album at Splendor on I can't remember which stage it was that I did. It was like, I think it was closing set. Anyway, Kingsmill watched it, and it went off great. And I partied all weekend watching other acts. On Sunday, I'm in the crowd watching a band, and I turn around and I see all these people partying, and there's a golf buggy coming through the middle of the festival. I'm like, what the fuck's going on? I haven't slept for 2 days or something. And it's a rep from Universal, and they're like, mate, you've got an interview with Kingsmill live to air in 15 minutes. We've got to go. And I was like, dude, I haven't slept. I can't talk, let alone do an interview. I was wasted. And they're like, you need to at least go back and tell him that yourself. You can't just not turn up. It's like this album of the week is relying on you sealing the deal this weekend with him. And I was like, fuck.
Put you in a rock and a hard place.
Yeah, I went back and I was just up front with him because I knew him and we'd had a previous relationship, and I just said, listen, man, I'm going to be honest with you. I haven't fucking had much sleep. And he said, don't worry about it, Fraze. We'll just go really light, have a quick chat. It'll be easy. And I was like, all right, sweet. Made me feel comfortable. We did the interview. Unbeknownst to me, Universal and Sony have been battling in the background in the weeks prior, 2 or 3 weeks prior, for the album of the week, for me to get that, because in Oz, I don't know, you probably know this, but if you get album of the week, Triple J is going to play your album all week. That means first week you're probably going to move between 2,000 and 4,000 units. Mm-hmm. You shift that, you chart top 20 to top 10. You chart anywhere in there, Nova has to start spot playing it. It's, you know,
they can't argue with it.
No, that's how it works.
Yeah.
You start getting spot played, you got a chance that something could go on Nova, and then you're off. So you need it, and if you don't have it, you're fucked. And I didn't know this, but because Gautier had somebody he used to know, and he was independent, and that was, I think it was the highest selling song around the world for
globally.
in 10 years or something.
It was for 12 years, I think.
Yeah, it was number one in every country. Like, dude, it was ridiculous. Yeah. And he just went, fuck it, I'm dropping an album. And he'd slotted it, not in the week that I was going for album of the week, but the week after, which Josh Pike was signed to Sony. And what happens is the majors go, right, we'll take this week with Josh Pike, you take Universal, you'll take that week with Phrase, so that no Aussie artists are clashing. Mm-hmm. Therefore, you're probably going to get it if you're the artist the major is pushing. Sony's come in and said, this is fucking bullshit. Josh Pike shouldn't be up against Gautier. There's no way Josh is going to get album of the week against Gautier. We want to push him back, make his release a week early, which meant he would be in the same week as me, up for album of the week. Universal had gone into Kingsmill and said, this is bullshit. Sony picked their fucking week. Anyway, I reckon Kingsmill must have been... Major labels don't tell me what to do. We're public broadcasting. You know what I'm saying? And so I think he was probably not liking that. Me, stupidly, at the end, I didn't realise how bad it was, that situation. And they said, can we get a photo? So me and Richard stood there together. I put my arm around him and I was fucking pissed.
Did you fumble your way through, though?
I was fine in the interview and I kind of pulled him in around the neck during the photo and I went, so who's it going to go to, eh? Me or Pikey, as a joke. But I don't think it came across as a joke. And I probably came across like a fuckhead. And coincidentally, following week came around, gets announced, goes to a totally unknown band.
Well,
Josh misses it.
That's probably his way of saying fuck you both.
I think that's what he was saying. Indirectly, he was saying fuck Universal and fuck Sony, and we don't take orders from anyone, and just because you're a major label and you slotted your week does not mean you're entitled to get album of the week. And it fucked me, dude. And I'd just spent a lot of money booking that tour. They were supporting the tour, but basically he took my song off radio, Babylon. It got pulled. It had started getting like medium rotation leading up. It got pulled after that. And I went out first week of tour with Flagrant and there was no bums on seats. And I didn't have it in me anymore.
Did you reach out to Kingsmill and say, hey...
He wouldn't respond to me. He just cut me off.
That was it. So from that day, that's it.
Pretty much. We didn't really have contact again after that. I tried to email him. I didn't get a response. Universal had said to me, he feels it's better if he just deals with the label because other artists are starting to want to take their own songs to him as well. Whether or not that was true, that was his reasoning. I don't think it was. And I knew firsthand, if you didn't have Triple J, you didn't have a chance. And I was like, I can't go out there and play to empty rooms. It's fucking soul destroying. And tour and be on the road and be losing money. And I knew that I had all that money. I'd just done that pub deal and I was set. I didn't need to do it. And I just thought, fuck it, I'm done. I'm not gonna do this. I went in, I already had it booked. I did the Like a version. I dissed Kingsmill in that. I don't know whether he knows that, but he was mentioned in it, you know, in cryptic, there's stuff in there. I can't remember exactly.
What track did you do? Was that a original or the Like a version?
It was Like a version. I did Tighten Up by the Black Keys. Gideon from the Preachers came in and sung it. It was fucking sick. First time I think a hip-hop act had used a live band, you know, because I was one of the first people to be doing that because my music had been written like that. So I always toured with a band.
And that didn't help the tour?
Doing that?
Yeah.
Nah, I don't think so. That kind of went overhead. And Anyway, I ended up selling my apartment and I bought 20 acres in the bush and I just disappeared. And that was it. The last thing I ever did was the Leica version. And I think I say in that interview, after today, I'm hanging up the gloves. And that was kind of the end of it for me.
But what happens with Universal? Because you've still got to technically do 2 more records.
I mean, they can't force you to. You can't put them out anywhere else. I guess there's a time lapse on that deal. And then eventually, down the road, a few years later, Marlon Records dissolved as a company. I don't know. Legally, I never had my lawyer follow it up, but I believe that because he dissolved, I was signed through him to Universal. That's done. My publishing deal. After that, I thought I'll still write music for people, and I'd written maybe 30 songs for people on Australian Idol that I thought would work for different artists. I sent them to EMI. They didn't even listen to them. I could see on the SoundCloud. And I was like, these guys just signed me because they thought the record was going to go plat or gold. They don't give a fuck about me as a songwriter like they said they did, because I said I want to sign to a label that's going to get me in rooms writing songs outside of hip-hop. Mm-hmm. And I kind of was pretty disillusioned with it all. And funnily enough, EMI were looking at me and they were looking at 360. My record got pulled off and completely flopped. 360, who they didn't sign, they signed me instead of him, and he went 4 times platinum or whatever. And the head guy at Universal, at EMI, got sacked and sent back to South America because of that fuck up. Like, they should have signed 60, in hindsight. So yeah, it was not a good time for me after that, and I've had a pretty, I would say, rough 8 years trying to rebuild myself as a person, almost. I think I'd become pretty arrogant and ignorant, and I think you have people tell you for long enough that you're brilliant, and you get flown around and picked up and free clothes and all that shit that goes with it. And I honestly think I thought I was better than other people, and it took me a long time out there in the bush to realise that that I was, just because I was good at music didn't make me special. And it took me a long time to come back from that, I think, mentally.
And you're obviously happy where you are at now, but do you think in hindsight you could have dusted yourself off, taken 6 months break, and then sort of hit Universal and gone, all right, you don't win them all, let's go?
It's an interesting question. Look, I think, hindsight's an amazing thing. And if I'd had the attitude to life that I have now, yes. But I didn't.
You're too immature?
And I was so angry at everybody and pissed off and felt like, I'm so good, why didn't it work for me, And like, to the point where we'd helped develop Illy, took him to Pegs, Illy got signed, and just as I was coming out, Illy was starting to blow up, and he invited me to a show that was the biggest one he'd done. I think it was at the Palais Theatre or whatever. And I couldn't go. I couldn't bear to watch a guy that I helped
be
successful and surpass me. It was crushing me inside, my own ego. And it took me a long, long time to get over it and get over myself. And I guess it helped me kind of become who I am and where I am today. So yeah, it's hard. I wish I'd gone back sometimes and think how different things would have been. But I also think after that, I remember looking at 60 and how fucked up he became on the gear and drugs, and how much of a tough time he had. And I was like, if things had just kept going, say Babylon had gone, I reckon I possibly could have been dead.
Well, I don't know if you've seen my interview with 360.
No, I haven't.
A couple of weeks ago.
Right.
For 13 years, he's in a really bad place.
Yep.
And he's hooked on a lot of drugs, prescription drugs, all the rest of it, and he's depressed and having a horrible time. And I say, do you attribute that to the success? And he says 100%.
Yep.
So he almost is at the point where he wishes he wasn't successful.
Yeah.
So there's a bit of a sliding door moment.
It's crazy, isn't it? And I think, I think it was Socrates, the philosopher. He said, fame is an unnatural state, you know, and I'm not saying, oh, I was this huge famous celebrity, but any kind of fame it's unnatural. And I don't think, unless you've been taught how to deal with that shift, or either that or you're just very mature or whatever it may be, but
it's only the people that are born into it that could probably equipped. If you're
right.
Like
I hadn't considered that.
Kid or something,
because you've been groomed.
Yeah, if you're Tom Cruise's kid or something, you've been told don't trust these people. But if you find it, especially at an age where you're messing with drugs and stuff, it's not going to be a good time.
Yeah,
and that's why so many people implode.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, if it had continued, it would have been a bad situation for me. In hindsight, I reckon there's a good possibility I would have fucking taken my own life, because I was in a pretty bad place mentally, and if I had kept getting more money, bigger fees for shows, more drugs, more touring, that it was a ticking time bomb. You know, and it coincidentally that downward spiral after it, where you come off it like, dude, I moved to the bush and I went from having hundreds of phone calls and business emails and meetings and flying and all that stuff that had been happening flat out, to literally my emails just stopped. My phone stopped ringing, and I was like, so I've got no friends now? I've got nothing, you know? Yeah,
but to play devil's advocate though, you were probably somewhat responsible because you removed yourself.
100%.
If you hadn't dusted yourself off and said, okay, this project Babylon didn't hit like we want to, but I'm back with my fourth one, and I'm going to have a different direction. It's going to be more musical. It's going to be less rap.
You're right. And I did. I took my bat. I said, fuck you, I'm taking my bat and ball and I'm going home.
Yeah.
And I did it to myself, and it in the end, that 5 years I did in the bush, I was probably a really hard person to be around. It dissolved, it eroded my marriage to Jade. We ended up separating, she left. In some ways, I feel like she saved herself, and in a lot of ways, by having the courage to leave, she saved me too, because I wouldn't have left. And it was that shook my world so hard. I ended up in a mental clinic, and I basically had to deconstruct myself and rebuild myself, you know. And it was that I think was that rock bottom moment that, you know, eventually I kind of remember thinking, I've either got to choose to live or I've got to choose to die. Like, and it's funny because it had at that point, it was nothing to do with music or being hard or having a story. It was just like, it was actually fucking happening, you know?
Was the substances involved then, or you were just...
I'd been sober when she left me. I'd been sober for 8 years.
That's a long stint.
Yeah. So it was a long time. I started to get sober towards the end of the phrase stuff. On and off, and it was coming up on 8 years when she left me. I went back to drinking after that. Not drinking, more drugs. Coke was my drug of choice. And eventually moved back to Melbourne, and I set up a big studio in Collingwood, and I started making dance music. So I did dust myself off and come back to music, but it was in a very different capacity.
So in that 8-year period where you say you're hitting rock bottom and all the rest of it, are you still making music?
Yes.
Or you are?
Yes. I had a studio in the bush at my place. I had a workshop and I was making furniture. It was kind of, I felt like I was retired, you know. Mm-hmm. I was dipping my feet in and out of music. That's when I wrote Friend Like You for Bliss and Esso. I wrote the music and the hook, that which Lee Fields ended up singing from the States. I wrote a song during that period that Barnsey used on his album, on one of his new albums.
And you still got royalties rolling in?
Little bits and pieces, yeah. That it starts to dwindle, obviously. You know, my APRA payments these days are pretty pathetic, but So I guess I kept my feet in there.
Did you enjoy that time when you did get yourself clear? Or was that whole period just...
Yeah, when I came back to Melbourne and set up the studio, and because I'd been collecting studio gear for so long, and a lot of that was vintage drum machines and vintage synths, which kind of just led me to they came from making dance music kind of thing, you know.
And they hold their value as well.
Yeah, big
so
time.
they're good it's a good hobby to have.
Yeah. And I love it. I love gear. I love equipment. I'm constantly looking for stuff. And I think I'm obsessed with even just the way it looks.
The buttons look cool.
Yeah, as much as I am with, you know, actually using it. But I do remember when I came back to music, it took me a long time to get to that point and feeling like, I know what I'm going to do. This time it's only going to be about me enjoying that amazing buzz that happens in the room when you're in the room working with someone and you go into that creative space. And as long as I'm enjoying that, the ethos for the record I was making was I wanted to enjoy making it and make music that you couldn't listen to and not want to dance. And I thought if it had those two things, it would be okay, you know?
And you always liked dance music?
Yeah. I think, you know, I went to a lot. I was pretty into raving when I was young. And I wouldn't say that, you know, hip-hop took over for me and that was my music of choice, but I've always had a pretty, broad taste in music. And I think for me, I like music that makes people feel good. I do. I like that. I like when people dance. I love Prince. I love, you know, up-tempo Stevie Wonder. I love Parliament funk and all that kind of shit. Like shit that's like, yeah, let's go.
And all that stuff is rooted in hip-hop as well.
Correct. You know, I guess it's all black music, I say. And yeah, so I really enjoyed making dance music. We started to get runs on the board. It was with a guy, Alex Markwell, who is in the Delta Rigs, a rock band who were all coincidentally kind of on the J's in a pretty decent way at the same time as me, the Phrase stuff. So we had known each other from touring and different festivals. And him and I got together. I went to see a Dan Sultan gig in Melbourne and he was like, Phrase? I was like, yeah, aren't you from Delta Rigs? And he's like, yeah. Asked me what I'm doing, and I said, I got divorced, and I'm back in Melbourne. I've been making dance music. And he goes, me too, listen to this. He had some headphones, and we switched headphones. And, we got in the studio and started this group called Le Savage, which means the wild. And I think came up with that from when I was living in the bush. And I felt like that's how I wanted the music to be, just kind of unrestricted. And it started off like LCD sound system, kind of that world. So live drums with drum machines, dirty live bass, all that kind of shit.
Like the Rapture.
Yeah. Yes, very similar. And then eventually I was like, fuck, him and I are great songwriters. And I was like, we're selling ourselves short. Let's go for this. And so it started to shift more towards like, let's say Calvin Harris land. Still made, I mean, Calvin makes all his stuff on authentic instruments, you know. It sounds like it's just production in the box, but it's not. And so it went that route. We did some stuff with Mark Ronson and Diplo, Portugal the Man, who had, you know, ooh, I'm a rebel just for kicks. Like that had been huge. We did their next single after that. We remixed it.
They had another song, American, so American.
Yeah,
that was a great song.
Yeah. We did one for Yeba Smith, who was on Ronson's album. We did one for...
And at this stage, Mark Ronson is Mark Ronson.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah, so you've got now a connection.
Correct, I've still got, yeah.
So you just send him links, you're like, hey, Mark.
I just reached out to him again. I'd stayed in contact with Mark that whole kind of, what do you call it, hiatus. But I still had pretty good contacts over there. So I went over, we worked with Mark, we worked with Nick Littlemore from Empire of the Sun. We met with Coldplay's manager. They were interested in signing us for management. And we were starting to get some runs on the board with these remixes.
Were you going to be like... Were you going to have your face out there, or were you guys going to... No, you were just going to be a production
always planned. And that was something that was important to me coming back to music, that I never wanted to front.
Yeah.
I never wanted it to be on me again, because I feel like you can't distance yourself from all the downsides of that, you know, if you're the face of it. Like, if people don't like the music, they don't like you, sort of thing. And that's
And you were once bitten, twice shy.
yeah. And I was just like, I don't care about that.
Yeah.
I would be happy to write songs in the background, produce records for people, and you know, have it like that. So yeah, there was no attachment there. We were going to sign overseas. We were going to go over and shop a deal, and then COVID hit. And basically that brings me to now. I'm back. I'd done carpentry when I was younger, and it just, all that momentum fell over.
You couldn't have kept it going online with back and forth, and we're still making songs, because a lot of
I
stuff's
could have,
done like
but
that.
I was out of money, dude. Do you know what I mean? I was quickly running out of money. Whatever money I had left from my divorce, I'd put into the studio. And when COVID hit, we couldn't have people to the studio. I couldn't even go there with Alex. I could go there on my own. And that lasted, I don't know, how long were we grounded for?
3 years.
3 years, basically. You know, so I go from being 38 to 41 or whatever it was in that time, and just remember thinking, I'm going to fucking end up a lonely old man with nothing. And because I'd gone back to building during COVID, I was making great money.
Yep.
And I was like, fuck. I don't know. Just kind of, I had to weigh it up. And I think, I don't feel like I've stopped music. I've still got the studio, and I'm still, you know, I still write music. I wrote a song with a guy down here recently from Texas a couple of months ago, like a singer-songwriter. I'm always doing something here and there, and I do feel like I'm not done yet. I think I'll build a house later in the year, studio move there, and yeah, I think I'll come back to doing something. What happens with that, I don't mind, but I don't think I'll ever stop making music.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when Merriweather becomes super successful, are you still in contact with him? You're in contact with
Yes.
Mark, but
Yes.
So you got to be. Are you stoked for him, or are you still a bit like?
No, it's stoked for him, but Merriweather went, I'm sure you know the story, but he went really south, and it destroyed our friendship.
Right.
I think he destroyed a lot of his friendships due to drugs.
Have you guys buried the hatchet?
Yeah, I mean, I won't disclose too much about him personally, because we have buried the hatchet, but I feel like I left it on, that was then, this is now. If I saw Daniel, we'd smile and have a hug and a chat, but I don't actively pursue any kind of friendship with him. And I don't think he does either. We just drifted apart. It happens in life, you know.
Yeah.
It ended badly. We spoke a few years after. He apologised, made his peace, and I just felt at that time that I didn't want to. I felt like I wasn't making peace to go on and rekindle the friendship and pick up where it left off. I just felt like, let's just make peace, and we haven't seen each other for 4 years anyway. If we do, great. If we don't, let's not force it though. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're happy with that sort of scenario?
Yeah. I think so. Yeah. I think if we were meant to be still hanging out, the universe would have that happening, you know.
And what about Nate? Flagrant.
Nate, I still speak to. I still consider him a dear friend. My mum died, not the Christmas just been, but the one before. Nate was there at the funeral. We had a huge, long chat. We went through a lot together. He put his ass on the line for me, and I think I've apologised to him for how I behaved towards the end of my career, and, well, the phrase career anyway. And that I know that I was horrible to work with, you know, and I would have stressed him beyond belief. And I'm so stoked that he went on to do what he did with Rule and his label. It makes me incredibly happy that at least for one of us, for all that effort we put in, something really great came out of that, you know, and that we weren't wrong. We
And
knew we were
it's
doing
been a long
good.
time. Like, he's been working at that for
His whole
25,
life,
30 years.
his whole life. And I do believe, you know, Nate's a very talented and clever man. And I think for anybody, if you work at something for long enough, if you're good at what you do, it will pay off, you know, if you can dedicate the time to it. And I think often in music, that's the thing is, you see a lot of people who are great duck out because they just can't afford to keep funding it. Like, you get to your 30s and you're looking around and everyone else has got kids and a house and you're still living week to week, you know?
Yeah.
And that starts to take a toll on your mental health, I think. And yeah, it's unfortunate that it's like that.
It sucks that people that get success from music generally either end up unhappy with it at some stage, and the people that don't get success from music end up unhappy that they didn't.
Yeah.
So the moral of the story is maybe the industry's kind of fucked.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, to be honest, I reckon the moral of the story is it's about your motivation. Like, M-Phase he's the perfect example of someone who he's so in love with music. He's similar, like I find his approach to music is similar to Ronson's in that they are music nerds. They love music. They live and breathe it. You know, they can tell you who played drums on that record from 1972 and what studio it was recorded at.
Yeah.
Like, and Phases has never approached music from any other angle that he loves making it. And I think if your motivation is right, then you're not going to end up getting bit by that, you know?
Yeah.
I think when your motivation's wrong, I wanted it to be successful so people would know how good and clever I was. Yeah. That's a fucking shit motivation, you know?
That's an ego-driven motivation.
Correct.
That's not
Correct.
driven for the love of the passion.
100%. And, you know...
But this is the really interesting thing with when you had the peaks of your career was when labels still had involvement. Now labels do have involvement, but probably if Phrase happened now,
right,
you wouldn't have the labels fucking around until later.
Yeah.
So that's kind of that sort of you and 360 is probably when that kind of sort of peters out of it.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think yeah.
They're just not as relevant anymore.
Yeah, correct. I mean, it seems to me, I don't know, I'm really not involved on that level anymore, but it seems to me over the last 10 years, like I'm watching kids, Chillinette and those kind of, you know, what's his name?
The next generation. Oh, like Nerve,
Chillinette, Husky. Fucking love Husky. You know, I'm watching those guys. They're just independent. They're fucking making money because they don't owe anyone anything.
Yeah. Shadow's another one from that era. He was in the other day and he's figured it out. He's like, man, you don't make any money from music, but what I'm going to do is I can put my own music out, 10 tracks. I'll drop a mixtape. I'll put some merch out with it because he's got a clothing brand.
Right.
Does that. He sells his weed products, blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
And then he goes, and I don't have a label. I just keep putting that out. I sell the merch. I've got enough fans to tour off that. And I just keep doing that.
Done. And if you can keep making money, you can keep making music.
And he's clocked it. That's all you got to do.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. And I love that it's like that. That's how it should be.
Yeah. The record labels had too much control for too long.
I think so. And they made way too much money off. Like, yeah, they did. They had too much control for too long. And I think a lot of people got screwed. At the same time, you know, if it hadn't have been for Universal, I wouldn't have had those experiences. So I guess it's a double-edged sword. And it's weird, you know, I look back and think part of me coming to grips with everything that happened was that I realized I didn't take any of it in. I was so caught up in the next success of it and wanting a platinum record and wanting to fucking dominate, you know, that I was unhappy the whole time because I was like, well, when's that going to happen? When's this happening?
The journey.
And I did not enjoy the journey, dude. I just didn't. It was a shit ride. And now I look back and think, people are like, but you achieved so much. And it's only now that I go, oh yeah, I did do some fucking cool shit that was fun. And I wish that I'd taken that in. And I think, luckily, I think that's led me to live my life like that now. Like I've slowed down and I'm just like, I know it sounds cliche, but it's about the journey, not the destination, you know? And I think I live by that a little bit more now, which is good.
If somebody who was a little bit senior in that point of your career where you weren't and pulled you aside and said, hey man, you've got a good opportunity here, like knuckle down, don't fuck it up, would you have listened?
No.
Yeah.
I was so pig-headed, dude. No, I definitely wouldn't. I just thought that I knew best. And anyone that didn't agree with me was trying to fucked me up, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was... I don't know how much the drugs played into that. I mean, I don't know what
Coke
60
does
would say,
feed
but
your
yeah.
ego.
Yeah. There was a lot of that. And when people are telling you that you're great every day, you know, you label and you're doing interviews and I don't know, you just start to think that you are. I remember I was at the airport once with Nate and, you know, I had a platinum card with Virgin because I flew so much and this family had pushed in and cut the line. And I just walked up to them and I said, "Excuse me, what the fuck are you doing?" And they're like, "Mate, we're going to miss the flight." And I said, "Yeah, but this is the platinum line." And the lady was looking at me like, "Mate, it's a family." And I pulled my card out and I said, "Do you have one of these?" And I remember Nate just looked at me like, "The fuck is wrong with you?" You know? Yeah. It makes me feel shit to think back on all that stuff that I'd got to that point in my head, but I guess you gotta learn from it. And
that's the thing. So this is the thing. We all make mistakes. We all do stuff that we're not proud of, but
Yeah.
you've got to take them in and learn from them.
yeah,
So if you were still doing that now at 43, then you'd be a
that'd be shit.
fuckhead, right?
Yeah.
But the fact that you know that, we've all done ego, stupid things. We've all done stuff that we regret.
Yeah.
But you've got to learn from it and don't make those mistakes over and
again,
over and over
yeah,
again.
you're right.
That's all,
Yeah.
man. And the other thing is a lot of us beat ourselves up over stuff we can't change. Like
Yep.
that family probably doesn't remember that
No,
shit anymore.
probably not.
But it stayed with you, right?
Yeah,
And-
you're right.
And you're the one that's holding that
it.
guilt from it.
Yeah. You're right. It's like you're kind of punishing yourself.
Yourself.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I'm in a good place now. I've got a partner. I've got some kids, and I told you earlier I'm doing FIFO work with the mining. It's good coin. Hopefully, my rough plan is that will lead me to the end of the year. I'm building a house, put a studio there, and we'll get back to making music for at least kind of half the year sort of thing each year. So.
And like dance music?
I think so, yeah. I don't know. I made another record that no one's heard with, do you know Mixer?
Mixer.
Mike Bigelow. He does a lot of Biases production.
Okay.
He did Baker Boy. He did Kian's big song that blew up, Waiting. He produced that. And him and I made a record in Collingwood in that time after the Phrase stuff called Tofu Roll. And it was me rapping again. So I got like maybe 10 tracks sitting there that we had a falling out and it didn't get released. So there's that.
It's interesting that you often say the Phrase stuff, like you're distancing Phrase from you.
Yeah, right. I guess so. I guess I have. I mean, some part of that comes from that, like people are like, would you go back and do a comeback tour now? I think, number one, I probably missed that 10-year anniversary and probably the 20-year anniversary as well. But I don't know if I could stand up on stage and rap at people and go back into that persona that I kind of had then. Like,
I think the Hilltop Hoods have said, and this was like about 15 years ago.
Right.
People are like, so how long are you going to do this for? And they're like, oh, we won't do it much longer. No one wants to hear 40-year-old blokes running around rapping on stage. But I think they're still doing it.
Yeah. I mean, it's not that I have it just doesn't. I think it's more that it doesn't align with where I'm at and who I am. And, you know, like I look
That was
back,
half your life ago. You know what I mean?
yeah, and sometimes I look back at photos of the early Phrase stuff and I'm rocking do-rags and New Era caps sideways and like huge jeans, looking like 50 Cent was dressed at that time, and I laugh at that. I'm like, fucking hell, I thought I was like a black dude from the hood, you know? I don't think that doesn't take away from the fact that I still have something and had something to say musically. I just don't know if I would go back. I think if it wasn't Phrase stuff, I would. Like the Tofu Roll stuff was kind of like the only way I would put it in the realm of Gorillaz.
Okay, yep.
Record. It was like that.
Again, faceless.
Quite eclectic, faceless, feature artists singing, me writing the hooks, getting people to sing them. It's fucking cool shit. There's songs where I'm just singing the whole song.
Yep.
I would have gone out and performed that. I got no issue with getting on stage and performing and rapping. I would love to get back on a stage. It's something that I hope eventually, maybe in my life, I get to do again at some point. But yeah, I don't know if I would go out and push the phrase stuff again.
Yeah, and you can understand when even bands don't want to perform their first few records because, like, even if it's not angsty and whatever, they're just like, that's so long ago, we're done with that shit.
Yeah.
But then people get upset because they want to hear the hits.
Yeah, it's tough, I guess, and it's always going to be that way, isn't it? You know, you're in a different place 20 years later.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I know when I go to watch, like, I went and saw Cold Chisel recently, and it's all I want to hear. Just fucking give me the juice.
I know, but then you've got to think that those songs are 40 years old.
I know. And like, if you see Barnesy play his personal gigs, when he drops a new album, you know, he plays new songs from the new album, and everyone's just like, give me fucking Working Class, man.
Flame Trees.
Yeah.
When you were in your bad times, and you dug yourself out, were you talking to anyone professionally, or what was it that, like, when your partner left, was that really what pushed you to then go, all right, well, I've got to make a change here?
Yeah. She left, things turned bad. I won't go into that, but I ended up, I had a couple of huge panic attacks, and I just unraveled mentally, dude. And
but you needed to.
I did, and I ended up in a clinic up in Queensland, and I spent about 5 weeks up there. There was no phone contact, anything like that. I felt like I wanted to die when I was there. You know, I was that devastated at losing the person I loved, and she basically got on a plane, and we didn't speak for. She wouldn't speak to me for 2 years. Before she finally said, we're getting divorced and we're selling the house. So that was a pretty tough time. And yeah, I definitely needed to go there though.
You needed professional help.
Yeah, I was seeing a psychologist, and in those coming years that it took me to kind of recover from the divorce. I would say that it was probably 5 years before I one day just felt like, oh, I'm okay. I'm going to be all right now, you know?
And a lot of males and females go through divorce, and some of them don't have the funds or the abilities to go and seek the professional help. And I think that's really important because there's no game plan for how you deal with that shit.
No. And I mean, I read somewhere that it's usually like half the time at least of the relationship. So Jade and I were together for probably 12, 13 years. And I reckon it did. It took me 7 years to actually feel like I'd re-arrived and I'd recovered, you know?
But in that time, you bettered yourself as a person and you felt happy with who you are at the end of it.
Yeah, well, what I was going to say is during that time, there was a lot of therapy. There was hypno I was getting done. Like, I was trying anything and everything I could.
Yep.
And yeah, I think eventually I just realized, like, I'd always, and it was going back to my music, like I'd always been a pessimist and a critical thinker and...
Glass half empty.
Yeah, trying to work out where things were going to go wrong so I could preempt that and outdo it, you know. Therefore, you end up looking at everything in a negative... Where can all the mistakes be? Where are the pitfalls, you know?
Yeah.
And I think what's changed for me is that I realised, like, it was actually my wife's mum. When I came out of that mental clinic, I used to struggle with her in our relationship because she was so positive to the point that I almost felt like she was delusional about positivity sometimes. Oh, isn't this great? You know, and I'd be like, fucking no, it's not great. We're stuck out here. It's whatever. We're waiting for a cab. It's raining, you know.
Yeah. She's glass half full.
Yeah, and I realised in the clinic, I thought about her and I kind of came to terms with the fact that I'd been wrong. And I was like, who cares whether you're delusional or not? If you're looking at something in a positive light and that makes you feel good, then power to you. Like, it spun me out, and I think I had that realization that I got to stop looking at life in that light. And
That was your breakthrough moment?
yeah, and I've spent the last, 10 years trying to see things in a positive light, and I generally think I do. I kind of go that way now. I still have bad days like anybody, ups and downs of life, but I think generally I've shifted my outlook, and I feel pretty good and I feel kind of blessed and grateful that, I know that sounds cliche, but
No.
I think I've switched things up there, and like my dad said to me once, like, life's not a rehearsal. You're not coming back, And I think I look back at the music and think, I don't want the next 20 years of my life to play out like that did, where I look back and think, shit, I didn't enjoy that when it was happening, and now it's past and it's gone, and I wasn't awake, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, I really envy the people that are mature enough at a young age to understand that, because most of us don't fucking
It's funny how some people do just have that at a young age.
Yeah.
There's a guy I'm working with in the mines at the moment. He's 24, an Irish bloke, and he's like, Devon, his name, and he's just got that. It feels like he's lived once before already or something, Yeah. It's weird, strange.
Are you enjoying that physical work?
Yeah, last year was I wouldn't say a rough, after my mum died, not the Christmas just been, but the one before, it was kind of sudden, and I found myself, I was drinking, like, not getting drunk, but just started having cans in the afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of played out for a lot of last year. And I was like, this is not good. I've never had a problem with drinking. It was always, I like to party and do drugs and binge drink or whatever. But I'd never drank every day. And I could, go 8 years without doing it and pick and choose. But I kind of realized, like, this is not great. And so, the challenge of going away up there mentally, like what it demands of you physically, it's 45 degrees and 90% humidity, 10 hours a day. And it's hard yakka. But I think I needed that. I felt like I hadn't been challenged in ages. Like, when I got there, I was really freaking out. I was alone. I didn't know anyone. Physically, the demands physically, I wasn't even sure if I could keep up with it, I've had those feelings of, like, I've made a mistake, I want to go home.
And most of the dudes in their 20s, or are you sort of...
There's a lot of the guys are young. It's kind of mixed. There's one guy there who's 72. He's just had his 4th divorce.
What?
Married to a Thai broad.
Wow.
Brought her over, she left, and he needs to re-up his money, so he's come back. I don't know how he survives the heat. But it's a good mix of people. I like it. I know I said to you earlier, like, I can see how prison life works for some people. I'm not saying I'm in prison, but it's very regimented. You're up at 4, bus leaves at 5, work, break, 10 hours, home, gym, dinner in the mess, back to your little room, back to bed. You do your washing once a week. And I like it. I know that sounds strange, but there's something, I think whether I needed the break because of what I was going through with my mum, and I felt like life was just, with the amount of work I had on here and my partner and kids and just life, bills, everything. Is it
hard being away from your family for that long?
Yeah, it is. But I think I know there's an end game. It's, and I just feel like I got to sacrifice a little bit at the moment. That's okay. It's not going to be forever. It's hard with my little guy. He's 8, and I would like to see him more, but it's not forever. It'll be for this year, and then I may touch in and out of it over the coming years. But it's good. It's been good. It was a challenge that I needed, and I've actually come out of it the first swing feeling like confident again in myself, and that, okay, you can step up when you need to,
Yeah.
That probably sounds stupid. It's just a job, but it's yeah.
No, but it's 10-hour shifts away from home in 40-something degree heat. It's not just a job. That's a
And the other thing is that there's mental game, because a lot of those guys are. It's just that people are trying to have it over the other person, and yeah, you kind of got to stay mentally fit with that as well. Anyway, it's good. I like it.
Do you tell those people that you're a musician, or
some of them know. Some of them have recognized me. There's guys there that have come up and said, "Oh, I heard you were a rapper. I've got your CDs." There's a guy the other day, Ryan, he was like, "I've got all the Blazing CDs that you were on with Nino Brown," which is fucking years back. So that's cool. But I think so I try to not let people know that it kind of comes up or comes out eventually. I think a lot of those tradies, they were listening to Triple J around that time, guys my age. So, but I got no issue with it. I'm happy to talk about it. And I think they're probably generally surprised by the fact that I'm there and that I'm...
Some people that don't have their finger on the pulse too much with entertainment think you had a couple of songs and now you've got $1 million house
Correct.
and you never work again.
Correct.
It's not
Correct.
the reality.
Yeah, correct. You're right. And I think that's what they're surprised about, to realise that it's not really like that. Or that, you might make some good money, but dude, you've made that money that money that I made was spread out. You take all that money from the Clockwork year and divide that by the 10, 15 years you put into the Perez project, it's not much,
No, and unless you've got some song that somehow, like you said, gets spins and or you get used for a commercial or whatever. I think there's some people that get a song, it becomes a commercial that gets syndicated for a bank or something.
Bang, you're done. Yeah.
Buy a house.
Yeah, correct.
Thanks for coming, but it's not like that.
Yeah. But I think they get a kick out of it. I get a kick out of it.
Does anyone start beatboxing in the mess hall and ask you to rap?
We have dudes are like, you should do a concert in the mess hall. But I think I like the fact that I am there and I am just having to fucking work and battle it out like everyone else. And it just reminds me that it's not like I don't want to. I've got a little studio set up over there, and I'm still thinking music. But I think that ties back to that. Just my motivation is different. I make music because I like music, and I would like to make more of it, and that's why I'm trying. That's kind of some part of the reason I'm there, is to afford myself the time to be able to do that. So yeah.
Sounds like you're in a good spot at the moment, man.
Yeah, it's good.
Well, I think we've probably talked about a lot of stuff and you've opened up a lot, man. Is there anything that we've missed? Is there anything else we need to talk about?
No, I don't think so. I feel like I've probably covered stuff. I mean, I haven't done anything like this in so long, and I feel like we've probably covered stuff that, like I said, not a lot of people know why Phrase just stopped and I didn't, as you said, dust myself off and put another record out. I guess it's because I was being a little bitch. But yeah, the whole thing that happened with Triple J, I haven't spoken about that before publicly, really.
And
ever.
Richard Kingsmill's not in control anymore.
I got no idea. I don't know where he is. What happened to him?
So I think about 2 or 3 years ago, I think he stepped down or got told to leave and whatever. Yeah, well, he would have been in his 50s.
But is he still cutting about calling himself the king on Insta and all that kind of shit?
I don't know. I don't follow him. Like, when I was, like, say, in the Phrase era, I would listen to the Triple J in the car and whatever, and he'd have the show on Sunday nights where he would handpick all the music. And other than that, I never heard anything about him, but I knew he was the main man.
It's hard. I don't know. Like, I've got no beef with him personally, but I guess what I don't know is part of me wants to say, like, yeah, but he probably did a lot for Australian music. But then again, I think I kind of remember him having like feelings of like it was him that he's responsible for Silverchair. And part of me looks at that and goes, no, Triple J is a public broadcasting. You are not Triple J. You are Richard Kingsmill. And Silverchair are responsible for their success because look how fucking brilliant their music was.
Yeah.
So
at what point does it become a dictatorship,
Yeah. And at what point are you crossing the line by taking credit for an artist's success? Like,
There is, look, I think...
It's hard to know. I actually don't know enough about his career and what he's been involved in, what he's done to say. So I guess I should hold my tongue there. And like I said, there's no beef, but I wonder what the actual consensus
I'm going to do some
is.
research after this.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to know what he's actually...
He'd be a great person for me to talk to.
He would be an amazing person for you to talk to. Incredible. Because he's also witnessed that whole birth and explosion of hip-hop in this country.
Yeah, and to his credit, like a lot of people shit on him, but to his credit, he put Aussie hip-hop on the radio when no one else would.
Right, see, and this is what I'm saying. There's things that I don't know. And I guess, does that make him responsible for the success? I'm not sure. It makes him a part of it, as much of a part of it as I was a part of it.
But I think now, obviously, with streaming, with, like, if you don't plug shit into your car, right, or you don't, now, if you can just jump in your car, it'll automatically connect to your phone.
Yeah.
Radio doesn't have the pull that it once did.
Right.
So things are changing.
Yeah.
Like if you were trying to break an artist now...
Is it like there's radio on Spotify? Do people listen to radio stations, or you just listen to...
You can, but you more pick a phrase song, hit radio, and then other people that like
I see.
that.
Yeah, I know that function, yeah.
But say you want to listen to the Hottest 100, I've got like Sonos at my house, so then you can go to Triple J and it'll play in through speakers. You can do it through sort of Spotify in that way. But no, you just radio the song.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Music theory.
Yeah.
Oh, man, I appreciate you coming in. I think it's been a great chat. And I'd love you to come back in 6 months' time and tell us where you're at,
It's been really fun. It's been good. It's been good to talk and good to, I guess, revisit that stuff. I guess for me, revisiting that stuff and talking about it out loud kind of helps my relationship with that era of my life, so it's good.
It's always like a mini therapy session.
Yeah. Well, I should be paying you.
You're paying me with coming on and giving your time, man. So, Phrase, can I call you that?
Yeah, of course. Thanks.
The artist formerly known as Phrase?
Yeah, that's good.
Thanks for coming in, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, my friend.
Cheers.
Ta.